Jazz has been called America's classical music and America's only true art form. The New York Jazz Initiative has made it its mission to help keep jazz music alive for generations to come. Take a look. These world-renowned artists are taking it to the bridge, actually bridging the gap between the older and younger generations. The Cutting Room in New York City donates space to the New York Jazz Quartet and New York City students so they can jam to the distinctly American art form known as jazz.
When you listen to us, I could only write music like Rob Derke, because this is the life that I'm living. I can't try. I learned from Duke Ellington, and I learned from Louis Armstrong, and I learned from John Coltrane, but we can only be the people we are from the experiences that we have. So I wrote this tune, Dispossession. Do you think it's going to be happy and pretty, or is it going to be a little gritty? The arts are really a precursor to social change. If you look at anything in history, you will usually find instances where the arts were a reflection of the change that people wanted before the change was actually accomplished.
Rob Derke, the president and artistic director of the New York Jazz Initiative and himself a saxophone player, offers the connection between jazz and the civil rights movement.
A singer by the name of Billie Holiday sang a tune called Strange Fruit. Any of you ever heard of that tune before? Any of you heard of Billie Holiday before? Okay, well, she sang Strange Fruit. And the song was written by a high school teacher in Queens named Abel Maripol, and he got it to her and she sang it, and the song was about lynching in the South.
Eric McPherson, the drummer in the quartet, explains to the youngsters how African culture has influenced the rhythms of jazz.
Because a lot of the instruments that developed in Europe, you know, there were civilizations in Africa where you had precursors, like say the precursor to the piano might be the thumb piano, the kalimba.
Rob, along with his bandmates, is at the forefront of redefining jazz for the future. On this day, they're playing songs from their CD, Mad About That.
Eric was saying how the blues wasn't so much a form of music as it was a statement. It wasn't so much a noun as it was a verb. It was the way that this music was conveyed spiritually. And that is really the underlying theme even through jazz.
This young audience, made up of students from several New York City schools, is jazzed about the music and its African-American history.
I think it was very good. It was a mix of jazz and blues.
I think jazz is something that everybody should be able to learn about, and it revolves around all different types of music, whether it's what they said from a variety of hip-hop, R&B, rock. It gives me another reason to be proud of who I am and what I stand for. I think my generation will continue jazz because it is a very well-rounded, entertaining type of art of music, and I think that every generation just has that group of people who would just stand up and take on the responsibility of continuing on this wonderful art of music.
It made me want to play music even more and wanted me to tell my cousins and my family and friends about this great music such as jazz. People my age, such as my sister and I and family, we listen to hip-hop, but now that I listen to jazz, I think they would love it too, since we listen to the same thing, so I think they will enjoy it.
The performance, it was amazing. I learned that music, where jazz came from, and I never knew that. And I used to think that jazz was not really a good song for me. Like, I didn't know if it was gonna be my type. But then I realized it's like mixed with hip hop and R&B and all that. If we didn't have jazz, we wouldn't have any music. And I just realized that where the culture came from and all the histories and the religions of all jazz and African Americans and stuff. Now we could be somebody because we know where our music, we have music. Also with like the Spanish and all of them, we could fit in through all hip hop and R&B and rock and stuff. And now they can at least feel happy and inspiring about their musics.
We'll be right back. The New York Jazz Initiative isn't missing a beat when it comes to the future of jazz music. Joining us is the artistic director, Rob Derke, along with members of his New York Jazz Quartet, bass player Carlo De Rosa and drummer Eric McPherson. Thank you all for being with me. So are you like most musicians, you sleep during the day and then you're awake all night?
Well, it depends what we're doing. It depends what we're doing. Actually, a lot of the work we're doing is educational. So, yes, we'll do a gig that might start at 11 at night, but we also might be in a school in Harlem at 8 a.m.
Now, explain to everybody what the Jazz Initiative is, what it does.
Okay, we operate on two fronts, both performance and education. And when we founded it in 2008, we put together a collection of artists that really shared that same fire for education, but we're also at the top of the game. We're talking about NYJAZZ masters and some living legends like Candido. John Faddis did a program with us, Dave Liebman. So over the years, we've built up this program that integrates both performance and education, whether it be K through 12 schools or universities around the country.
And why, as musicians, why was it important for you guys to get involved with this? Carla?
Well, I think it's something that really needs to be addressed. There's a lack of education in a lot of public schools for music, and specifically, and I think by having an outreach, you know, reaching all these children and also teenagers, we really make an impact because they're not exposed to this music any other way, and it's really the music of this country.
Mm-hmm. Eric, you said that you wanted to play football, you're sports crazy like a lot of kids, but you found music. And
music found me.
Oh, music found you. You want another child to be able to experience that?
Of course, because music opened up the world to me, literally. You know, I've been able to travel all around the world several times, you know, and so, you know, you see other cultures, other people, other languages, other foods, you know, and you get to share that expression, you know, with different people. So to be able to share that with some younger people, you know, to show that they have some opportunities to do some different things is like, you know, it's a great thing to do, you know.
Now, Rob, so when you're teaching kids, educating them about jazz, what are you teaching them? How do you do that? I know you're picking up the slack in a lot of ways from public schools now, and since it's, you know, kids are studying something else. What are you teaching them about it?
Well, we're in a position right now where jazz programs have entered the mainstream in education, sort of. But the concern right now in the industry is about building audiences. And we have been going in the wrong direction for 30 years. Jazz in particular has taken on this this aura of being museum music.
Sort of too highbrow.
Too highbrow, and when they teach kids, it's, oh, you have to like this because it's cool, or this is what you need to learn. And our approach is very different, and we're really focusing in on building a relationship between these young students and us as artists and us as creators of this music. If we don't build a relationship first, they'll never want to go out and see something on their own. There's music programs in schools across the country, but if you ask any of them if they're going to live jazz concerts after they graduate, it's small percentage. We have to work on building a relationship and teaching these kids that this is something that is connected to their history, connected to all of our histories as Americans. Even if you weren't born here, it's still connected to your history. It defines us as a nation. And until we have a relationship that supports the evolution of the music, they'll never look backwards and respect the past.
One of the things that we found interesting about your program is I think that you talk to children when you talk about jazz with them, this connection between jazz and African history.
Right. Well, there's a lot of things that are just left out of the history books. And not to say it's revisionist, but it's just missing. And kids, when we teach kids, and the look on their face when they learn about Billie Holiday singing Strange Fruit 10 years before the civil rights movement really hit the forefront, they're shocked. They're surprised at the guts of this woman to do that. Or if you talk about integration, look at the Savoy Ballroom in the late 20s that was 100% integrated, and people went there regardless of color. And the most important thing is, could you dance and could you swing? And there's a lot. Arts has always been a precursor to change in our country and around the world.
It sounds like you're letting them know how music brings their history and their own life alive.
You're right. It has sparked change. Right. It gives them power. This empowers them.
And a lot of this is not just through the education and the talking and the lecturing. You guys perform together, right? It's a jazz quartet. We're missing
Aaron Ortiz, yes, who's on the road right now in Europe.
And how often do you perform, Carlo? And how important do you think that is to getting that message across? Not just talking about it, but letting people experience the music.
I think we perform it every time that we see students, you know, when we go into schools. That's always a component of what we're doing. I think it's extremely important to what we're trying to do, because most people at that age, most children or even young adults at any, you know, I mean, it's really something that's missing from our generation. You know, maybe it's hard to put a number on it, but basically, without having that experience of seeing people create and perform in front of you, you don't have any kind of understanding of what's going on when you just put it on at home on a recording. It's it's a very different experience, and then you understand it better when you actually are at home and, oh, well, let me see. Oh, that's like what they did when I saw them. Like,
and I can hear that bass. I now know what that instrument is.
Right, it's the instruments and how everybody interacts and the communication on stage that's happening that unless you experience it, you don't even know what's happening.
Okay. And Eric, do you enjoy performing in front of this young crowd that really, you know, that it's sort of, raw audience out there?
It's quite refreshing, because a lot of times when you reach younger people, especially if they've never been exposed to it before, you just get without any pre-contrived idea of what it is.
They don't have expectations.
Yeah, you just hear it, and then 9 times out of 10, when people hear something and they're open to it, usually younger people are open to it, so to be able to expose them, just let them hear something that they might not hear otherwise, unless you go digging. Like, I consider myself lucky, and I think all of us could attest to this, where we were lucky to be around certain individuals coming up that exposed us to what it is. So now that I'm at this stage, I'm like, man, I gotta, if there's any possible way to continue that on, because that's how it happens because, as they were saying, it's not in the schools so much and things of that nature. So it's actually on, you know, programs like this to actually, you know,
let people know about what you're doing and why it's, you know, you've got all these really big name musicians involved, which says something about the work and the mission that you have in front of you. And you obviously all love the music. Why is it important to pass this on, the legacy of jazz on, and to draw those young people into it, to understand it through their own history and their own connection with the music?
Right. Well, that we need a lot longer to talk about. I mean, the importance of this
you
is...
got 30 seconds.
This music is written into our DNA as a country. It's cultural. Yeah. It defines us, and we define it. I mean, it is all about communication between us as artists on the stage and with the audience in front of us. They are... Jazz, unfortunately, is losing audiences. Not so much in numbers, although you could say that, but losing that communication between audience and artist. And we're reaching an age that's very, very dangerous, where music has left the schools to a point where the people in charge of these programs did not come up in a school system that actually provided them with any kind of music education. So when we step into a situation where we're trying to get funding, as hard as it is for smaller organizations that only want to fund brick and mortar ivory tower type of institutions, we're at a point where we have to convince them about the value of something that they don't know they don't know. and that's where we're getting in trouble, because these administrators, whether it's school administrators or local government officials, they're of that age where they missed something. So if we go another missing link, then we're going to have a different conversation in 10 or 15 years when our children reach that level.
You want to make sure that there's something to bridge that gap.
Yes, this is the moment.
Before it gets any broader.
Right. We cannot lose this moment. And it's not about the history books. It's about supporting music that is new, that is written now, that's responding to our current times, that takes a chance.
Tradition of...
Of course. Okay. Always.
Right. New York Jazz Initiative.
Correct.
There's a website.
Yes.
And so if anybody is interested in being involved with your programs, or...
We welcome...
And I'm assuming you will also accept donations.
Very much so, and they go right to the education work we do, and it's www.nyjazz.org.
Thank you all for being with us.
Oh, thanks for having us.
Thanks.
We're going to switch gears a little, a different